Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over really period 6, which is unit 5 in your study guide. So we're going to look at the modern world, 1914 to the present. So World War I, if you know mania, you know the main causes of World War I. One of the big causes is this thing called militarism. It's when a country builds up its military and has a large standing army during a peacetime. And so all the European countries, they have this huge like naval arms race. And they're all building up their weapons. And then they have this other thing called alliances. So that would be the A. And so every country is in an alliance, an entangling alliance with other countries. So Germany is in an alliance with Austria, and they're in an alliance with the Ottoman Empire. And that would be the Triple Alliance, which will later be called the Central Powers. And then you have the Triple Entente, which will be Britain, France, and Russia. And so those will later be the alliance, okay, the allies. And then you have nationalism, which is the extreme pride in your culture, your race, your heritage. And so this is going to lead countries to believe that they're better than other countries, and so you have to justify it through imperialism and militarism. And so when you go to war, you have to prove that your nation is the superior nation, the master race, which you see again in World War II popping up, but this is what they want to do when they fight their wars. Imperialism is the I in mania, and so when you look at imperialism, it's the conquering of weaker nations to benefit your own. And so eventually what ends up happening is like in the scramble for Africa, there's only so much land. And so these big boys in Europe are eventually going to start fighting over the same land. And Germany and Italy are starting to feel pretty inferior because they got in on the imperialism game late. They did not get in as early as Britain and France did. So Britain and France had the most colonies, and poor little Germany and Italy, they feel inferior because they don't have as many colonies. And so when you look at the main causes of World War I want you to think mania. Okay, so militarism, alliances, nationalism, imperialism, and then the very, very last one, the A, is going to be this thing called assassination. So the final A is assassination. And it's the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And so he is the heir to the Austrian throne. He's a Habsburg. When he's killed by a terrorist group, the Black Hand, who is a Serbian nationalist group. The Serbs do not want Austria controlling them anymore, so they want to overthrow that. And so they go ahead and they kill the heir, who probably actually was going to be a lot nicer to them than the other ones that are going to come in the power, the other Habsburgs. So Austria is going to demand that Serbia submits to their will. Russia decides to go ahead and back Serbia, and that's going to defy the Austrians. And then Austria is going to declare war on Serbia, and Germany, because they're in an alliance with Austria, has to declare war. And basically, war everywhere, okay? Everybody's declaring war on everybody, and that is why it's called a world war, because it's not just in Europe that they're actually going to be fighting. Their colonies are going to be fighting. So it is not just like on the European continent. You're going to have battles and things going on in Africa. You're going to have things going on in Asia. So everybody's going to get entangled in this war, whether they like it or not. Germany had been planning for a two-front war, and that Schlieffen Plan. So Germany plans on attacking France in the west and then attacking Russia in the east. And so they've had this great big plan on how to do it since the 1890s. And this is pretty much how the war actually breaks out. So Germany is the powerhouse in World War I. They actually have the better army. But when they get to the west with the French, by the time they get to Paris, the French have created trench warfare. And trenches basically are going to prolong the war because you dig holes and you're not really popping out to ever fight. So instead, you actually stay in the trench. And people live in trenches. They sleep, eat, do everything in the trench. The space between the trenches is called no man's land. And it's no man's land because nobody lives up there. Because you can't. Because in World War I, we call it a modern war. So the technology that's going to be created in this modern war, like tanks, the British are going to create tanks, and at first they're really not very good, but as time goes on with any war, you're going to have your scientists mobilizing, your inventors mobilizing for the war, and so everything gets better as time goes on. Poison gas is going to be used in World War I, so we're going to have mustard gas, and this is going to be a huge biological warfare tactic. And so you never know where gas is going to go. I mean, it could go on your side, it could go on the actual enemy, which would be your target, but gas is very deadly, and you're going to have a lot of soldiers who are going to die and get exposed to this poison. Airplanes are also going to be used during World War I. They're not as great as they are by World War II, and they're certainly not what they are today, but airplanes are kind of like flying coffins. Matter of fact, that's what most of them call them. Pilots who are fighting in World War I, they are not fighting with high-tech planes. They're dropping the bombs by hand. It's no like missile targets, none of that stuff. They don't even have brakes originally. So you're going to have to just slow the plane down and hope that the plane slows down before, you hit the tree, because they don't even really have runways either. You remember, Kitty Hawk didn't really happen that long ago. I mean, you're looking at about 15 years before World War I actually starts, so planes are pretty simple. Machine guns have been invented, but now they're kind of becoming more of the modern machine guns that we understand. So you had the Gatling gun back in the 1860s, but now you have a machine gun which is going to be high power. You're going to start seeing light machine guns too being used in World War I. So World War I is a modern war because you have tanks, poison gas, airplanes, and machine guns. But at the same time, you still have people who have horses. They're going to use horses in World War I to actually retrieve the dead soldiers. You're going to have some other technology, some old technology too, like with bayonets. So when bullets become scarce, the German army is going to issue bayonets, which is basically a long knife at the end of your actual gun. So if you ran out of bullets, you could at least stab somebody to death. The war is all over the world, so China and Japan are going to declare war on Germany, and they're going to attack the German spheres of influence in China. Remember, spheres of influence deals with a country's imperial influence over another. So this term, spheres of influence, goes back to imperialism, and all it basically means is that Germany had spheres, they had influence in China. Now, of course, Japan's getting in on this because Japan is trying to become an empire. They are really an empire, but they really want to dominate Asia. They want Asia for Asians. The colonies in Africa are also involved. The Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe, is involved. They have sided with Germany and Austria, and they want to protect their lands from an increasingly aggressive Russia, because Russia borders the Ottoman Empire, and Russia under the Tsar is looking very much at, maybe kind of taking over some of that land, because they do realize that the Ottoman Turks are a weak and dying empire. The United States will join in 1917. They'll join after the Zimmerman Note is discovered and given to the United States by the British, that told Mexico if they went ahead and sided with Germany during the war, get the United States involved here on a domestic war, then Germany will go ahead and give Mexico all the land that they lost in the Mexican War, the Mexican-American War. So the United States will join because of the Zimmerman Note and unrestricted warfare. And unrestricted warfare means that the German U-boats, the subs that the German Army or the German Navy is really using, is they will target a civilian and they will target a military target. They don't care. Unrestricted means anybody is game if they're in the Atlantic Ocean, so you shoot everybody. The United States joins right as Russia is having to pull out of World War I, because Russia has a Bolshevik revolution going on. So the Russians are experiencing a huge economic, political turmoil going on, and Russia can no longer keep providing soldiers for this war, and they're losing 1 million soldiers. So they have to go ahead and pull out their armies and focus on some internal struggles that are going on. When you look at World War I, the Allies win it. The U.S. joins in the right moment in 1917. Russia pulls out. The German army is very weak. They don't have a whole lot of supplies. The Austrian and the Ottoman empires are really pulling down the German army. And so when the U.S. joins with these doughboys, these American soldiers who are fresh off the farm, they're fresh, they haven't fought, they haven't been in the trenches for 3 years, as the European allies had, like Britain and France, they come in and they kind of reinvigorate the actual allies. And so we win. And the Germans, by 1918, asked for an armistice. An armistice is a ceasefire. So November 11th, at the 11th hour, 11th day, 11th month, 1918, Germany says, please no more, and America and the Allies agree to a ceasefire. Consequences for World War I, Wilson's 14 points. This is his plan for worldwide peace. So President Woodrow Wilson is going to create 14 points. He looks at everything that causes World War I, mania, and he says, I'm going to eliminate all future wars. And it's a lofty goal, and he does try to do it. It's just that Britain and France aren't willing to listen to it. They're not willing to put aside all the anger, all the hate, all the rage that they had towards Germany. They've lost a generation of young men. They've lost an entire economy. So they're not putting that aside peacefully. So the U.S. is going to want self-determination for Europeans only. So if you're a European group of people, you get to have your own country and your own government. You rule yourself. He's going to want the formation of the League of Nations to ensure worldwide peace. And then he's going to want fair treatment for Germany and Austria. And that is a sticking point for England and for France and Italy as well, because they want revenge. They want to take that knife and they really want to twist it into Germany, particularly Germany. At the Treaty of Versailles peace talk, the war guilt clause is going to be blamed on the Germans. The Germans are going to go ahead and have to pay for the entire war reparations, and they have to accept the total war blame. Germany doesn't start the war, but they have to accept it. There's going to be creation of mandates, and mandates are basically going to be colonies that are controlled by members of the League of Nations, mainly Britain and France. So Britain and France get what they want. They get war reparations. Germany has to accept all war guilt. Germany loses a whole lot of land, and Britain and France is going to gain a whole lot of land. Like the Middle East is going to be taken away from the Ottoman because the Ottoman Empire collapses. And so most of the Middle Eastern countries are going to go to Britain and France, particularly the ones with the oil. And they were clearly, the British and the French are clearly going to be the winners in this. And the losers lose land, they lose self-esteem, they lose everything. In general, the treaty fails to resolve any of the initial conflicts and the underlying causes of the war. I mean, it's not what President Woodrow Wilson wanted. By the time the peace talks are over, the treaty doesn't really resemble much of what he wanted. I mean, the League of Nations is going to get passed, but the U.S. won't join it, and the U.S. doesn't sign the Treaty of Versailles. They refuse to do it. There's a huge destruction. You get the death of a generation of young men. You get widespread destruction of the actual lands, particularly in France and Germany, with farms, towns, roads. New countries are created, so you get Austria-Hungary, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia, and that's done from the old Habsburg Empire. Poland and Romania come back as countries, so those group of people, they get their country back. Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they gain their independence, and these are Eastern European countries. And China now is going to fall kind of under Japanese control. And I say kind of because Japan will invade China in 1937. Japan is going to have a sphere of influence over China, just like the U.S., just like Britain, just like Germany did have. You're going to have the sphere of influence over China. Why you need to know this? You're going to be asked questions about World War I. It could be multiple choice. It could be an essay. They might want you to compare certain aspects of World War I with other wars. So, like, you should kind of understand that World War I is considered a modern war, and it's considered a war that kind of helps prepare us for World War II. You might get an essay comparing World War I and World War II. If you know World War I, know mania, those are the causes. And if you know World War II, know the word tire, totalitarianism, isolationism, revenge, and economies, because some of the stuff that causes World War I causes World War II. So to answer the question thoroughly, you really do need to look at comparing the two, making certain that you answer the question. So in this question, it's comparing the nature of the post-war world envisioned by the actual winners of the nations. So that's what you need to look at to answer this